I'd firstly like to touch on what our current UK offshore wind asset base is. This slide here depicts the 10 successful applications from the Scottish round, which was concluded the early part of 2009. The UK round 3 is a big deployment initiative, which I'll talk about in a second, but the Scottish round alone has a total installed capacity forecast at 6.5 gigawatts. And out of the 10 applications, we secured 2 of these sites with our partners, Scottish and Southern Energy and npower, and we secured 30% of the available capacity from the Scottish round. The first site in the Moray Firth coast is the Beatrice site, 920 megawatts in size. Our partner is Scottish and Southern Energy, and on that site we have a 20% stake. The second successful award was on the Inchcape site, which is offshore Fife in central Scotland, again on the east coast, 905 megawatts, so similar in size to the Beatrice site. And again, partnering with npower Renewables, we secured a 25% stake in that second site. In the blue, you can see the timeline for the deployment of the projects. The awards will take place last year. The consents will be awarded around about the end of 2012, 2013, with construction commencing in the summer of 2013. First site operational 2015, and all the sites operational that we're involved in by 2018. We now talk about UK round 3, which Steve has touched on earlier. This is a huge deployment for the offshore wind. Total of 9 zones spaced round about the coastal waters of the UK. Aims to deliver 25 gigawatts. My expectation is it may be slightly higher than that. So when you couple that with the 6.5 gigawatts from the Scottish round, we're talking about over 30 gigawatts of offshore wind between now and 2020. As Steve also referenced, that the environmental conditions associated with these UK round 3 zones have never been managed in the past other than in the Beatrice demonstration project. You're looking at going further from shore and in much deeper waters, and that's what makes Energy unique in terms of our experience in deploying turbines in that type of environment. We've partnered with EDP Renewables. We've applied for 2 of the 9 zones, and as we mentioned, we're eagerly awaiting the outcome of that process, which will be formally announced tomorrow. Again, you can see the timeline for the deployment of the UK round 3 in the bottom left-hand corner. Similar process to the Scottish round sites, but about 1 year later, because the Scottish round awards were made at the early part of 2009. So the awards will take place tomorrow. The first consents will be granted at the earliest 2013, with site construction in 2014, the first site becoming operational in 2016, and the full UK round 3 deployment operational by 2020. So that's our UK-based assets. Steve mentioned heads of terms joint venture that we signed with Taiwan Generation Company the later part of last year. This shows you the political framework that has been established in that particular region. They have a 1700 megawatt pipeline, of which we've secured access to 25% of that pipeline. And the first project is a Changhua offshore wind farm on the west coast of Taiwan, 600 megawatts capacity. There's already 4 years wind data available, so you can determine what the likely output is going to be from these sites. Relatively close to shore and relatively shallow in relation to what's going to be deployed in the UK waters, and we expect commercial operations by 2013. Now, how do you make money in this business? You know, when you look at the financial modelling for the full life of an offshore wind farm, you get good returns. But when you look at the short to medium term, the returns can be very significant. And this is a case study of the Greater Gabbard project, which is an offshore wind farm which is currently being developed by SSE and RWE. But if we go through the history and the history of the transactions associated with that project, you can see where there's huge value creation during the early years of the development of offshore wind. Starting back in December 2003, this site was awarded, but in May 2008, Fluor sold 50% of its stake in that project to SSE, which was soon after SSE had acquired Airtricity. And that 50% stake in a 504 megawatt project generated revenue for Fluor of £40 million. Approximately 9 months later, when the SSE took the project to financial close, they then sold that stake on to RWE npower for £143 million, realising an increase in value of £100 million in less than 9 months. And this is what we've modelled here in terms of the Scottish Round sites that we've already secured. The two key points when these transactions took place, the first one was at consent, when all the necessary consents had been granted. And the second value creation point was at financial close, when all the contracting had been put in place, the turbine deliveries had been secured, etc. And if you look at the metrics associated with these transactions, at consent, the project moved for £157,000 per megawatt, and at financial close, the transaction metric was £567,000 per megawatt. When you take our net interest in the two Scottish Round sites, which equates to 456 megawatts, and apply these values, you get a value of, at consent, which is £57 million, which is about 2 to 3 years from now. And in the financial close, which is a further year down the track, a value of £207 million for the Scottish Round sites alone. So that excludes anything that we will secure in the UK Round 3 process. And that equates to 84 pence per share at the PLC level at consent, and £3.04 per share at the financial close. So as I say, the returns over the full life of a field, which is typically 20 years, is very attractive, but the returns in the short to medium term are very, very significant.